Good morning. So firstly, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the Jajawarung country on which this retreat is being held, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. And then to also specifically to everyone here, to welcome you, and to welcome you to our few days together, spending some time in retreat. And further, that you have this that you have the wish to spend your free time, your long weekend, especially when the weather is so warm and lovely, that you choose to come and spend your time here in retreat. This really brings great joy to my mind, and I rejoice in your virtuous intent. Opportunities to come together and spend time cultivating virtuous qualities in our mind, retreats such as these, they are very rare. For most of you, this will be perhaps the only retreat you are able to do this year, or maybe you'll be able to do a second. And that you have chosen to do so is really quite fabulous. Because when you think of the situation of the people in our world, so there are about 9 billion people residing in around 200 countries or so, how many of them even have the wish to engage in retreats such as this? And of those few who have the wish, very few will get the opportunity to do so even once this year. So recognizing how rare this opportunity is, and also recognizing that despite its rarity, you have taken up this opportunity. This is important, to recognize that you have taken this opportunity. And that you, once again, just to really emphasize this point, that you have decided to take this free time, this long weekend, when one would normally be relaxing with friends and loved ones, going outside in the country, enjoying this beautiful weather, when instead of spending the time in the usual way, you've decided to come here to train your mind and to learn to relax your mind in the Dharma, to learn to develop various excellent qualities within your mind, thereby having more peace of mind going forward. So here you've come together, retreating from normal activities of your daily life, as well as from your work and other such activities, retreating to an environment where you can focus on developing your mind. So again, I want to encourage you to recognize both the rarity of what you have decided to do, and secondly, to rejoice in this decision that you have taken. And to achieve anything, but in particular something that is as rare as an opportunity such as this, requires both that one has the wish to do so, and in particular, a wish that is strong. Because if wishes come and go, these don't lead to very much. But a strong enough wish that led to you making the booking and following through on the booking, this is required. But not only that, merely having a wish for something from our side is insufficient to achieve what we're wishing for. Many favorable conditions have to come together. And now you have managed to the entirety of favorable conditions have come together. You've been able to travel here. You've been able to travel to a particular place, a place that is well organized, well run. It's clean. Food is being prepared for you. The shopping has been done. You have someone here who has some knowledge and something to share with you. And you are thereby able to come together and cultivate these qualities in your mind, because so many interdependent conditions have come about. And at the outset of our time together, I want to really point out how fortunate you are for many reasons, and one of the reasons why you are fortunate is you are in very good hands. You are being guided in this retreat by Venerable Tsepel. And Venerable Tsepel I've known for some years, but she has been striving in the Dharma in this life for many years, longer than I've known her. And she is leading this retreat based on her own many years of experience that has come about in dependence on a combination of excellent studies, a lot of retreats that she has done, as well as various beneficial work activities that she's engaged in for others. So I know you're in excellent hands. And also, from my side, I really appreciate that independent on you all coming here, I have the opportunity to share what I know. If you hadn't all come together, I would have just been sitting quietly up there, not having this opportunity. So I also really appreciate that you have come here and given me this opportunity. So our time together, we're going to be looking at this very short text by the great Lama Tsongkhapa, this text called The Foundation of All Good Qualities. So it's really just 14 verses. It's very brief, but the meaning that is contained within is vast. So whilst we'll be reading just a few lines, the meaning that it contains is really immense. The entire path for mental transformation is presented in here. So if you're wondering, what is the purpose of this text? Why are we engaging in this text? Well, I don't know many of you, but what I do know is the motivation with which you have come here, because it's the motivation that underlies everything that we say, we do, and we think. And that is our deep underlying yearning for happiness. And coming together with this is our wish to be freed from problems and difficulties. This is what motivates everything that we do. No one wants to have problems. Everyone wants to live happily. So this is our underlying motivation. But to achieve this, we know from our lived experience, is difficult. We need to achieve happiness and gain freedom from suffering. We need to understand what are the various excellent qualities that we need to develop within ourselves, and what are those faulty qualities that we need to abandon. So this is our underlying motivation for coming here. And this text presents the complete and unmistaken method by which one can come to understand and train one's mind in adopting excellent qualities and abandoning all faults within. And this text leads us to firstly come to recognize this excellent opportunity we all have achieved that comes with this human rebirth, and that we have achieved amongst the various realms of beings. We have achieved a remarkable life, and we have achieved a life that, compared to beings in many other realms, is a life of outstanding pleasure. That being said, though, our life is still far from free of problems and difficulties. This I don't need to tell you. So we need to develop our mind further to gain freedom from all problems and difficulties. And this leads us to the second of the three objectives that this text leads us towards, which is to the actual fulfillment of this deep yearning for happiness. Because our yearning for happiness has only ever been partially fulfilled, in that we experience only the briefest of respites from problems and difficulties. But what we really yearn for is a happiness that is completely free to problems and difficulties, lives where we will never ever have to experience problems again. This is what we yearn for. And the achievement of this is the second objective of this text. The third is that recognizing that this yearning for happiness is something not unique to myself as an individual, or to us in this room, or to those people that we know and care for, but is something that's shared amongst all beings, whether human or non-human. All yearn for happiness, and all have a right to happiness. There's no one who deserves suffering. Everyone has the capacity to attain a state of lasting peace and happiness. Therefore, everyone should gain such a state, should be guided to attain such a state. So the third objective of the text is to develop a mind of great compassion, a mind which yearns for all beings to attain the same freedom that we are striving for. And to bring this about, we know we need to develop ourselves further so that we can guide all beings to achieve such a state. So this then is the third objective of the text. So in brief, the purpose of this text, the reason for engaging in it, is to fulfill our deepest innermost wish, which is to be free of problems, to never have to suffer again. In other words, to achieve liberation or freedom from suffering or enlightenment. And this text presents in the brief condensed form the method by which to achieve it. All the problems, suffering, and difficulty that we experience come from one of two sources. So the first, which is that which is most recognized and discussed in society, is the problems and difficulties that come from a material or physical source. So this refers to our physical body, as well as everything surrounding us in the material world. So these would include problems in relation to we may be too hot, we may be too cold, or when our body changes and we have aches and pains, or maybe we become ill. So there's a wide variety of physical and material problems that we already have an abundance of experience of. And the solutions to these, society, especially our society here in this country, really is well developed. So there are many excellent solutions to our physical problems. If it's health, we have good guidance on what to eat and what not to eat. We have access to excellent medical treatments and so forth. And we also know if we're a little bit hot, then we need to take off our jacket. If we're a little bit cold, maybe put on our jacket, this kind of thing. So society is really quite well developed, especially again in this country, in terms of how to look after, or to resolve any physical and material problems that we experience. And very often when either someone asks us or we think, how am I? Our response is based on this, our current experience of our physical or material situation. So if one's in financial distress or in poor health, then one is going to give one kind of answer. But if one's health is okay, or one's outer conditions are okay, then we say, yeah, everything is fine. So this is a very common way that we use to assess whether life is okay, if we're happy, or if life is a bit difficult right now. In terms of the two sources from which we experience problems and difficulties, the one that is the physical or material source, our physical bodies and our outer world, this is where society puts almost all of its focus. The various activities we engage in, as well as the work we engage in, and much of what we think about is how to change our outer world. And so society has many excellent techniques for this, and there's not much really for myself to say on that, because this is well addressed in society. But the second source, this is largely ignored, although these days less than it was in the past. And that is the second source of our problems and difficulties is mental. It's our way of thinking. It's from our very way of thinking that we experience problems and difficulties and we suffer. So here, the solution to our way of thinking is not at all physical. It is mental. It is through changing our way of thinking. So the briefest way to describe the faulty ways of thinking is to use the term afflictions or afflicted mind. So when our mind in general is afflicted, we suffer. So just like when our body is afflicted, we suffer, so too when our mind is afflicted, we suffer. And these afflictions, this general category of afflictions, are a wide category, but at their very root, their very basis, is grasping at oneself as dear, wanting oneself first and foremost to attain happiness. And from this attitude of cherishing ourselves first and foremost, we end up actually creating problems, difficulties, and suffering for ourselves and for others. But whilst this is the case, through coming to both understand this and understand how to change our way of thinking, we can gain freedom from this. And by gaining freedom from this, we gain freedom from any possible suffering that otherwise would result. So the alternative way of thinking that we need to develop is a determination, in brief, a determination not to harm others. Not to harm others through our physical behavior, not to harm others through our way of speaking, and not even to harm others through our very thoughts, with our thoughts being the basis from which our physical and verbal behavior follow. Moreover, not only do we need to commit to refraining from harming, we accompanying this, commit to being of benefit to others, to be helping others in any way we can, both in the short, immediate term, as well as through developing qualities within ourselves, being able to guide others to develop qualities within them, and thereby lead them to a state of freedom, a state liberated from suffering. So independence on changing our way of thinking like that, we actually change how we experience the world. The outer world's not changing, but how we experience it radically changes. Therefore, we develop lasting, stable happiness within. So what we, in brief, are striving to do is to abandon all harmful ways of thinking that are not in accordance with reality, but to rather strengthen, and we do this through developing and strengthening our ways of thinking, which are not at all harmful, but are actually beneficial and in accordance with reality. So therefore, there are two sources of our problems and difficulties: the outer, the physical or material, and the inner, our way of thinking. And corresponding to these two sources of problems and difficulties, there are two different sets of solutions. So by changing our the material world, we have an impact on the problems that we experience from the material world. Likewise, through changing our way of thinking, we change the impact that the negative impact that our way of thinking could have on us. So of these two, it's very clear that society puts a great emphasis on the material. But of the two, which is more powerful? And again, it is very clear from your own lived experience that the mental is much more powerful. If one's mind is happy, no matter what's happening around oneself, one copes with it so much better. One experiences it differently. Likewise, if one's mind is deeply unhappy, no matter what surrounds oneself, one experiences it very differently, and therefore one is suffering. So to give examples, and whilst this is clear, it needs to be abundantly clear to us at all times, so that to give us the strength of mind to adjust what we focus on, what we emphasize. So to give some clear examples, that if someone is ill, perhaps severely ill, but if they are genuinely, not just with words, but genuinely focused on what they have that's good in their life. Their body may be in pain, their body may be failing, but they are aware of the loving, caring people around them, both paid professionals as well as family and friends. And they can look back at their life with some joy at what they have done and the benefit they've brought to others. Such a person, due to their mental illness, their mental happiness, are experiencing their illness in quite a mild way. Someone else with the same illness, the same level of illness, but their mind is overwhelmed by their suffering, and all they can think about is their pain and what this illness potentially means for them. And so their mind is overwhelmed by this. They will be oblivious to the caring, loving people that surround them, both the skilled professionals and their dear family and friends. They may also have abundant wealth and therefore can afford the very best care. They may have lived a life of comfort, but all of this is not apparent to them at that time. Just their misery is. So in this way, depending on one's way of thinking, one can experience the same thing in a vastly different way. So again, the reason I say this to you is to give you encouragement to actively and continuously to stand up against the stream of what one has been pushed towards throughout one's life, which is focusing through our activities and our way of thinking on looking after the material side, and to readjust this, rebalance it. Because to the extent that from now you can develop positive, virtuous ways of thinking that really are in accordance with reality, when your problems mount, perhaps when it becomes your time to experience overwhelming illness, if you have taken good care of your mind, the way you experience life's problems and challenges is vastly different, and thereby the quality of your life improves greatly. The focus of Buddhism is almost exclusively on transforming our mind. And this process of training our mind, transforming our mind, is the very meaning of Buddhist practice. So if you ask yourself, or someone asks you, what do Buddhists practice? What is meant by Buddhist practice? It is just this: training your mind, transforming your mind. So society, this is largely neglected. There is some focus on it, but largely neglected. But this is pretty much the sole focus of Buddhism, training our mind. And the method to do so has two parts that happen concurrently. One is the gathering of knowledge, because it's through having knowledge that one understands what are the wholesome, virtuous ways of thinking that I need to cultivate within, and how to do so, and what are the harmful ways of thinking that I need to abandon, and how to do so. So one needs to acquire knowledge. But going along together with the acquisition of knowledge is the integration of that knowledge, the training of one's mind in dependence on that knowledge. These two need to work together. It's difficult to train the mind if one has no knowledge. You don't know what you're doing. And equally, if one just gathers knowledge and doesn't integrate it, the purpose of that knowledge is not being achieved. And another way to understand this is in the same way that you've come here today in clean clothes, and your house is probably quite clean too. What we are trying to do is clean our mind. All the pollution on our mind that can cause harm and suffering, we are trying to eradicate. And the method to do so is through cultivating opposite, wholesome, virtuous ways of thinking, so that they overwhelm and eradicate unwholesome ways of thinking. This is how we train our mind. This is how we practice. If you think of some garlic. So garlic, we know if we have it in our kitchen, and we don't fresh garlic, and if we don't use it too quickly, that fresh garlic in our kitchen will sprout. And if it's in the garden, it will continue to grow. Even if you pick some of the garlic cloves, the plant itself will continue to grow. And also, you know that from handling fresh garlic, your hands can smell a little bit as well. So if we take this analogy and see garlic as something unwanted, fine to eat, but in the analogy, we say something unwanted. If you keep picking the garlic, the fruit of the garlic, the cloves, but you don't leave the plant, what you're doing is you sort of removing the garlic from your garden, but you know it's going to keep growing. Moreover, your hands smell a little bit each time you remove the stains. Remove the garlic cloves. So you know, just merely by picking the garlic cloves, you aren't solving the problem entirely. But at least your garden has less garlic in it, which is something that you want. So in this analogy, what we need to ensure is, firstly, through recognizing amongst the variety of lives possible, this rebirth that we have, this type of rebirth we have as a human being who has met the Dharma, and we have the potential to radically transform our minds. This is a supreme rebirth, an excellent rebirth. So we have to, at the very least, ensure that we achieve similar rebirths again, and we don't fall into states where our suffering is intense to the extent that we cannot mentally transform ourselves, engage in spiritual practice. So this, in the analogy, is likened to just removing the clothes of garlic. But the garlic is always going to keep growing back. So whilst we have to, at an initial level, and it's indispensable at this initial level, that we achieve the causes that lead to a good rebirth, we need to go further than this. Because whenever, in every excellent rebirth one both has the potential to spiritually develop, but there is also the possibility that one may die and a far worse rebirth may befall oneself. So one is not experiencing a stable situation. Moreover, we know from our own lives, we experience an abundance of problems and difficulties. To have a life freed of that, to have a continuous stream of lives freed of that, is ideal. So going back to the garlic, it's not enough just to remove the fruit of the garlic. One has to remove it from the root. Then your garden will finally be free of garlic. So in this analogy, what we need to do is not just trim the fruit of the garlic, the cloves, but we need to eradicate them from the root. So what we need to do is not only create the causes that lead to further excellent rebirths. Together with this, in addition to this, we need to strive to remove the root of all our suffering from where it resides, which is in our mind. So at the initial level, we strive to reduce the strength of our afflictions, these consciousnesses that afflict our mind. So we try to reduce their strength and their frequency through developing contrary, wholesome minds. But together with this, we try and get to a deeper level, try and progress towards cutting the very root of these afflictions so that they can never grow again. When that is achieved, one achieves a state of that can be called either liberation or freedom. Liberation in that one is completely liberated from suffering. One will never suffer again. Or freedom, the meanings will be the same. One is completely freed from suffering. This state of liberation or freedom is a state of lasting happiness. It's not the temporary happiness that we have in a good mood, then another bad mood follows. This is lifetime after lifetime of lasting, abiding happiness. This then, in the analogy, is likened to the garlic being removed from the ground, uprooted. It will never, ever, ever grow again because the root has been eradicated. But there's that third step that's still required. Our hands from the process now smell a bit. So we need to remove the smell of the garlic from our hands. That refers to, even though the great practitioner has gained liberation from samsara, they are completely freed from suffering and they'll never suffer again, there's still some pollution left on their mind. These need to be eradicated, and when they are, that practitioner arises as a Buddha. Then they are the most powerful of beings, with a mind completely freed of any trace of their afflictions. And they can be of great benefit to others. Because their mind is free of fault, they can guide beings in an unparalleled way. So this then is the 3 stages of training. Firstly, ensuring we're creating the causes for an excellent rebirth by reducing the strength of the afflictions and increasing the strength of the wholesome minds. To go together with this, trying to cut the very root of our afflictions so that we can gain liberation from suffering, and striving to even remove the stains of the afflictions and thereby attain Buddhahood. Within us, the very nature of our mind, we find the very nature of our mind completely free of any trace of the afflictions. The nature of our mind is pure, unpolluted, not stained to even the slightest degree by the afflictions. So the nature of our mind is pure. But whilst that is the case, our mind is afflicted, not in its nature, but it is afflicted in a temporary manner by this variety of afflictions. These afflictions have various degrees of strength, coarse to subtle to very subtle. But none of these are in the nature of our mind. Our mind is free of this. So by hearing about this, and then thinking for yourself, reflecting, analyzing, you will come to recognize this, that this is true, come to understand it for yourself. And to going with this will be a wish then to gain freedom, to return to this, to remove these afflictions completely from our mind so that its pure nature shines through. And the solution to this, to our current state, the method to achieve the desired state that is freed from the afflictions is solely this: hearing teachings again and again, and whilst hearing them, reflecting and meditating on them. This is the process. To do this, one requires a skilled teacher. This is indispensable because what we are trying to do is something that in the long sequence of lifetimes that we've had, we have never carried through to completion. Never once. And how can one say this with certainty? Because when that lifetime comes, where one carries this through to completion, one is liberated from suffering. One will never, ever suffer again. So to do something that we never once in this long sequence of lives have done, a skilled teacher is indispensable. Someone who can impart complete and unmistaken knowledge we acquire, as well as guide us in how to integrate that knowledge within us, to develop it within us, and thereby transform our mind. So the very foundation for our mental transformation is relying on a spiritual teacher. So that then brings us to the text itself, the foundation of all good qualities. The title coming from the very first line or the first verse. The foundation of all good qualities is the kind and venerable Lama. Relying on you correctly is the root of the path. By seeing this clearly and through continuous effort, please inspire me to rely on you with deep respect. Looking at the first line, the first words in the Tibetan are good qualities. So these good qualities need to exist within the continuum of one's spiritual teacher. And those good qualities come about in dependence on the same process that you will be guided in, which is both the simultaneous gathering of knowledge and the integration of that knowledge into your very way of thinking. That is how one develops these good qualities. These very good qualities, which are required in order to spiritually develop and gain freedom from suffering, gain Buddhahood itself. These are the very foundation for our training, and they abide within the continuum of a spiritual teacher. It is indispensable that they abide within the continuum of the spiritual teacher, because it is in dependence on his good qualities gained over lifetimes of engaging in this process of study and reflection, that through having these good qualities, he is able to skillfully guide others to develop those qualities within. This is called illuminating the path to enlightenment. It's in dependence on him developing this foundation of excellent qualities within himself, that he can illuminate the path to enlightenment for others, so that they can develop that same foundation of excellent qualities within, that foundation which eventually leads to the attainment of Buddhahood. And this understanding is not something that is unique to Buddhism. It's not something different from society. Society works in the same way. All of you have a wide number of skills and abilities and a lot of knowledge. All of this has come about in dependence on others. You've been shown by others, taught by others, how to develop all the skills and talents you have, whether you learned them as a child, as a young adult, or right up to now. Everything that's learned has been taught to us by someone. So therefore, independence on others, in particular independence on teachers, one is taught things, one is shown, knowledge is imparted, as well as one is shown how to develop that knowledge within into a skill, a talent. So society works in the same way. The next word then in the Tibetan is that of kind or kindness. So just to say as an aside, the word kindness in English, it should also be understood to include the attitude of benefits, because in English, kindness is more of a motivation, but what some people do brings us great benefit, even if they weren't necessarily trying to do so, but that was the outcome. So just to say that in general. So this term kindness here is in relation to the spiritual teacher, but we are the recipients of a tremendous amount of kindness. This is the very nature of an interdependent society. Where this is most clear is the kindness that we have received from our parents. From the moment that we were born into the womb of our mother and she became aware of our presence through the process of our birth and those very vulnerable early years, we were entirely dependent on the kindness of our parents. That we could, from such a vulnerable state, knowing nothing, that we could be protected, as well as then slowly develop skills ourselves, comes about in dependence on the kindness of our parents. And they continued to shower us with kindness throughout our childhood. And as we grew into young people, we were still always at the forefront of their care. And in fact, this remarkable kindness that we have received from our parents is something that happens for the entirety of their lives, from the moment that they're aware of our presence within, throughout their lives. We are the foremost recipient of their kindness and care. So here, one's really encouraged in this general sense to be aware of the kindness of our parents. But this context is in the kindness of the spiritual teacher. Because where the spiritual teacher is similar to our parents in terms of the kindness that they bring, is that the spiritual teacher teaches us methods to transform our mind, which will bring us happiness in this life. So this is where our spiritual teachers and parents are similar in kindness. They both want us to be happy in this life and to be freed of problems and difficulties. But the spiritual teacher possesses a skill that our parents lack, a skill that leads them to be able to guide us to develop qualities within that will bring happiness in lives to come as well. Our parents would love nothing more than be able to bestow us the knowledge and the skill so that we can attain lasting happiness in lives to come as well. But they lack that. Our spiritual teacher, on the other hand, due to their own excellent qualities, are able to guide us to accumulate the causes that will lead to excellent rebirths in lives to come. So this is the understanding of the great kindness of our teacher, that independent on them, we will experience ever greater happiness from this moment forth in our life, as well as lifetimes to come. Then the term translated as venerable, I should have rather translated it as principle or main, because it can be translated in many different ways, but this would in this context be the correct way. So the first line should rather be, the principal foundation of all good qualities is the kind Lama. Because here one recognizes that the Lama is of principal kindness to us, because in dependence on his kindness, we will experience great benefit for lifetimes to come. Having met a spiritual teacher who possesses an abundance of excellent qualities, and even if we recognize that alone is insufficient to lead to us to be able to transform our minds. We also, the second line, need to rely on him correctly. So relying on him correctly or relying on him properly is indispensable if we want to achieve or fulfill the potential, achieve the benefits of the relationship that we have with our teacher. So relying on him correctly or properly involves being in his presence, hearing teachings repeatedly over a sustained period, and training one's mind in the way of being guided. This is how one relies correctly or properly. The second line concludes with, is the root of the path. So relying on the spiritual teacher correctly is the root of the path. So path always refers to mental paths by which we develop, that we progress or we travel on our journey towards liberation from suffering, towards enlightenment itself. So the very root of this path is the spiritual teacher, because it's independent on relying on his guidance correctly that we will develop these mental paths within. We will both acquire knowledge, and we will be able to develop that knowledge into paths leading to liberation and enlightenment. And by seeing this clearly, the third line, by seeing this clearly or knowing this, we will recognize the great value of what we've achieved. And we will want to utilize this opportunity that this life and relationship presents to its fullest extent. Therefore, we will make continuous, not sporadic, but continuous effort. Then the fourth line, please inspire me to rely on you with deep respect. So here this line is expressed in various ways throughout the text. One is turning towards all the Buddhas and one spiritual teacher, asking for inspiration. It's usually translated as blessing, but the meaning is to be inspired. So blessing, I don't like the word very much. We feel quite passive, but the meaning really is to be inspired for us to in this instance, to take his teachings to heart, to hear them and integrate them within our very being, our very way of thinking. So we're turning then to all the Buddhas and our Lama for inspiration. And please inspire me to rely on you with deep respect. We summarize then what we looked at this morning, which is that we all want to be happy. And happiness means a state of lasting peace of mind where we are never disturbed by any problems, difficulties, or suffer in any way. Recognizing that these problems that we want to be freed of come from two sources, either the physical, material, or the mental. We here come to focus on the far more important of the two, on the mind. And by focusing on the mind, what we are looking to do is to train our mind, or put into practice the teachings, to train our mind through the process of meditation based on knowledge. In order to engage skillfully, accurately, properly in meditation based on knowledge, we need to understand what are the wholesome minds that we need to adopt and how to cultivate them within, and what are the afflicted minds that cause all our pain and problems, and how to abandon them. To gather this knowledge, as well as to gain the skill in transforming our mind, we require a teacher who possesses, through his own lifetimes of training, abundant, excellent qualities. Recognizing the great importance of a teacher, a being who's skilled in illuminating the path for others to gain lasting happiness, a path that we have yet to develop and travel along to fruition, we recognize his great kindness. And therefore, the great kindness is in particular because in dependence on his kindness, we will eventually achieve liberation and enlightenment. Recognizing this then leads us to develop a deep respect for our spiritual teacher and to commit to striving with effort continuously through hearing, continuously reflecting on what we are hearing continuously. This very process of hearing and meditation leading to transforming our minds. So then thank you. We can conclude there for this morning. Thank you very much.